Welcome back to Culture Your Creative. I'm the host, Luke Ledhill. I run a brand development agency here in Los Angeles, helping people reach their target citizens through branding and marketing initiatives. Culture Your Creative is a platform really that gives me the opportunity to talk with incredible people that I know or know through other people that are doing amazing things in their skill set and knowledge base. I also host a 21st Club think tank, which brings together people that do good and give back through social and spiritual and environmental initiatives. Today, I'm really excited. This has been a long time coming. Derek and myself have been going back and forward on the phone, but I finally get to hold a real conversation with Derek. So I'd like to bring in my guest today, Derek.
Hello.
Hello, Derek. How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you, first and foremost, Derek, for your time. I really appreciate it. Now, you and I have gone back and forward quite a bit on the phone. I've been following your work for a long time. We were actually mutually introduced by a friend, Mark, who does amazing work with events. And it was Mark that suggested we initially talk and connect over everything that you do. So Derek, would you like to start off, give us your full name and currently what you are actually, a brief overview of what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Derek Sabori, and thanks to Mark for introducing us. I'm glad to be here. I am a sustainability consultant, a sustainability advocate, a sustainability teacher, a guide, kind of all those things in one. So I teach sustainable fashion at Orange Coast College here in Costa Mesa, California. But I consult for brands on sustainability in the fashion space. I do online courses for my own school. I call it the Underswell School of Understanding. So that's my consulting group. It's called the Underswell. And then I'm the co-founder of a brand called Cosm. So it's a certified B Corp that my former partner, Troy Eckert, and I started years ago. And so that still runs. And that's sort of taking everything that I learned in the sustainable fashion and apparel space and applying it to my own brand to kind of put it to work and put it to the test and see if it could be done in real life on my own. So those are all the projects that I'm doing now.
I love that, Derek. There's quite a lot to unpack there. Let's before we get stuck into everything specifically that you do, can we go back a bit? Because I know you've been in the apparel and fashion industry for a long time in California. Can we go back? I'd like to hear what you were doing prior to now.
Yes, it's a kind of a fun story. It's kind of a windy story that starts back in, I like to start back in my first degree. I thought I was going to be an engineer. So I went to UC Irvine as an engineering student, but I originally thought I was going in to be an architect. I didn't know what engineering was at the time. And I thought it would be creative and design oriented. And once, of course, engineering is science and it's engineering. And I lasted about a year and a half, almost 2 years in civil engineering. And I realized that was not for me. Switched my major to art. So I was a studio art major, graduated with a studio art degree. Right when I finished, I went to Europe, traveled through Europe for about 6 weeks, came home, had no idea what I wanted to do. And just happened through a friend who was working at the brand Volcom. Volcom was a small little brand. This is 1995, 96. And they needed somebody to answer their phones for a week or so while the receptionist was out. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. It was summertime. That led, that free answer, that free service that I provided as an intern, that was almost 19-year career there at Volcom. So that I worked in the merchandising and design department. I worked in production. I did raw materials. So I spent about 20 years there developing my career and latched onto sustainability while I was there, about 2004, 2005, caught wind of it. I went back for my MBA while I was at Volcom as well. So kind of then jumped over to business, came back for sustainability. And it was just something that I became really, really passionate about. The more I learned, the more I wanted to do. And the more irritated I was that nobody had talked to me. None of my degrees had mentioned this. There was one class that I had. It was a social ecology class. But it was not a part of the apparel industry, the action sports industry. My career path was just on this, hey, focus on, margins, getting product here on time, right place, et cetera. And so to have this sort of in-your-face approach to, hey, business should be done better. And we need to care about people and what are they being exposed to and how are they working. It was a mind-blowing thing, you know, and I took it and ran, turned that into a role there. I became Vulcan's vice president of global sustainability over the years, got to work under their former owner, Kering, who owns Gucci, Saint Laurent, Stella McCartney at the time, Puma. They rolled out an amazing sustainability program that I got to be a part of and work under their guidance for about 5 years. So I felt like another degree in sustainability while I was there. So I rolled that out about 19 years, left that to go out on my own to go help Troy start Cosm. And then 5 years later, here we are. So
Derek, let's go back a little bit. There was something you mentioned that whilst you were working at Vulcan, you found sustainability. Now, you surf. I'm also from a small surfing town in England, so I grew up surfing. So it feels to me that that's a natural progression, that people that are part of a water tribe or, you know, grew up in the ocean would have an affiliation first and foremost and quickly with sustainability, right? Was that the path you went on? How did that happen?
I don't know. I mean, that it always felt like that was always the conversation, right? And I think the outside community for sure was like, well, that makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't surf brands be doing more? Why aren't they doing more? But at the the heart of it, we were apparel brands making clothing, pumping out 4 seasons a year, constantly putting out new product, new prints, new patterns, what's selling, who's it working for, growing sales. At the time, Vulcan was a public company, right? So you had quarterly earning calls. How are we doing? What's up with the stock? Where's the next winner? We need a cheaper jean. We need this board short in a new color, new prints. We're trying to keep up with so-and-so. It's very easy to get detached from, you get so deep into the business side that you're detached from the board sports element. And I remember one time Richard Wolcott, and even I got caught up in it, right? We were having this talk about sales meetings and where they should be. And I was just like, hey, it needs to be in a place where we can get, our samples quickly and blah, blah, blah. And I remember Richard Wolcott, the co-founder, just looked at me and goes, Derek, we're a riding company. We're going traveling. We're going up to Mammoth or wherever we were going. And you just got to get the samples there because that's what we do, So every once in a while you would have this sort of checks and balance. But I mean, it was about the business and getting that product made and getting it done on time. So I think that was to your point. It felt like, yeah, of course this makes sense. Why are we not doing more and understanding our footprint? But I think that word right there, understanding it, you just don't know. Nobody knew about value chains, the supply chains, raw materials, processing, so on and so forth, and understanding what our impacts were, where they occurred, nor did we even have any idea of how to trace our supply chain so that we could even start asking those questions, especially once we moved our manufacturing overseas.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what you just said, Derek, is extremely important. Everything that's happened in the last 3 months, I think, is hyper-focused and will probably jet propel forward the changes that we need to see within the fashion industry. Yeah. I know the UN, for example, is really taking a highlight and focus on fashion and the industry and the changes that can be made in a better way for sustainability, for the planet, for humanity, for people, for workers. I mean, take me back a bit on the process of how you learn and what you learn, because you and I can talk back and forward about this, but I would really love for people watching or listening to this to learn for the first time something they don't know. So I would really love to hear more about you and your journey with that.
Man, that's, one, I'm going to start kind of at the end, and that's exactly why I teach sustainability now, right? Because I saw this huge gap. The more that I became a sustainability professional, and then I had the opportunity to go and work with Kering and work with all these world-class brands and go to different conferences all over the world, I immediately realized that it was a privilege for me to get this information and then to try to go back to the organization and rally everybody up and say, hey guys, there's this new stuff. It's so important. We have to do it. Everybody goes, yeah, we want to. We're excited. Let's have a meeting. But meanwhile, we need to get this X, Y, and Z done right on time, the marketing campaigns, et cetera. So, and then you finally get a hold of somebody. You put those initiatives into the product. It takes a year or 2 years to come out. getting that information that you had, which went to the design team, to the product team, through the marketing team, to the retail stores, and the hearing how the retail staff was, the conversations between the retail staff and the customers, there was so much of a miss. It's like, no, that wasn't, you don't have the right information. I saw a gap there. I'm like, we need to get everybody educated and speaking the same language so that consumers understand why the brands are doing what they're doing and why it's important. So I guess to answer your question, for me, the first thing I was exposed to was just better materials. The first things we did at Volcom were using hemp, organic cotton, and recycled polyester, recycled PET, which at the time, I didn't know what that was, right? It's like, oh, well, of course it must be better. And so my journey started with just like, hey, doesn't it make sense to eliminate some of these hazardous chemicals, to eliminate PVC and phthalates and plasticizers out of, all those smells, realizing that those aren't the smells of joy because you have new product that you're unboxing. It's the off-gassing of sometimes hazardous chemicals. So your mind just starts to go, whoa, I never really thought of it that way. And then I guess my learning journey was the first thing that really tipped me into what sustainability, or got me closer to where I think of sustainability of now, or how I think of it now, was a woman at Caring. Her name was Holly Dublin. She goes, hey, you guys are doing some great stuff. You're a 1% for the Planet member. You're donating, which is good. You're doing some volunteering. You got a couple cool little things going on. What are you doing in your supply chain? What are you doing for the people in your supply chain who make your products? What are you doing in their communities? It's nice that you're doing something here at the beach in Newport. What's going on in India? What's going on in China, right? What about those people that are making your goods? Like, man, I don't know. I don't know. Good point. And then my next connection there at Caring was Dr. Helen Crowley, and she was their ecosystem services and biodiversity expert. She's a PhD. That was my next point of contact at Caring. And just realizing, like, even those words, right? Ecosystem services, biodiversity, and like, what is that? Well, I'm not a science guy. We're creatives. We're brand people. To go now and dive in and understand what those, and so that's everything I teach now is biodiversity, ecosystem services, natural capital, taking everybody back to like the foundational understanding of what sustainability is so that we can go, that's right, chemistry. So we have to dive in and understand chemistry, biology, and even just social studies and understanding too. You mentioned the UN, that the work that they are doing around the SDGs, that's another thing that I drive home and teach. That is sustainability. It's a lens that is much more. When I started, I used to even tell people, it's like, well, I do the environmental side. That's my side. I do environmental sustainability. There's no such thing. It's got to all be tied together. You can't have a healthy planet without having healthy people. No healthy people without a healthy planet. It's all tied together. So for me, sustainability is about people, planet, the planet and people, and the SDGs, or the UN SDGs, those sustainable development goals. Now we're talking about no poverty, ending hunger, clean water access, gender equality, justice, all these things that for me are like, yeah, and to have watched over the last 10 or 15 years how the movement has matured, for sure. We have all had to adapt and learn about perfluorinated chemistry and non-phenol alcohol, all these NPEs and chemistry language and microfibers and how they occur and what's hazardous and toxic and what is persistent in the environment and bioaccumulative mean. Like we were just talking about hemp, and cotton. And even trying to understand what organic cotton is and why that's better. And I know for someone like me, we might go, well, yeah, everybody knows. Now everybody doesn't know how organic cotton really can benefit and why it's better, what an LCA is, what a life cycle assessment is. So for me, it was just one after another learning. It's like, oh yeah, there is no sharp answer because you really need a data, approach, a life cycle assessment on anything. If you were to ask me, well, which is better, this or that? It depends. That is the answer I give to all my students. And once I learned that, to go, you know what? I don't know. And chances are none of us know until we have data that we can compare and contrast. There are goods and bads with everything, depending on how it's made, where it's made, by who it was made. Was there child labor? Were there toxic chemicals? How about the effluent? Was there land conversion? Did they chop down ancient rainforests? Too many things to try to throw in there. So I immediately became overwhelmed with it all and have had to settle into the learning and realize like I will be learning for the rest of my life. And I just want to share everything that I learn and try to, box it up so that people can understand it and not be overwhelmed with it all. So,
yeah. Derek, I think there's quite a few important key learning pieces that you mentioned there, and what people can take away from that. I often talk and think about the fact that there's a lot of opinions in the marketplace or in the industry, and there is opinions that are good and there's opinions that are bad or wrong. And I think that the most important thing is that there are people like yourself that are strong advocates for the right reason and want to do the right things. And what the right reason and the right things are, which is very important, is what you mentioned, is to educate other people. Because we can all learn about this and that, but if we don't pass that knowledge on to others that don't know, and that's not a bad thing that you don't know, because it just means that you're able to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a complete rabbit hole to go down with regards to sustainability. I mean, you mentioned everything through product chain to logistics to sourcing to manufacture. It's not, as you mentioned, it's not sustainability for the planet. It involves humanity as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is even more relevant, or what has really been brought to the surface now is it's a systemic issue as well, as we've seen in the last few weeks with everything that's been going on with regards to the system. And the way things are set up currently are not necessarily conducive for big changes that you and I could talk about with regards to the planet or how the fashion industry is, because there's a lot of people that are benefiting at the top from how things currently are built or in place, right? So where would you lead from with this, Derek, in the way of being a bigger advocate or to be able to help more people with knowledge?
Well, I guess for me, that is my approach, right? That's sort of my commitment is, hey, that's my message now is, hey, let me help you learn. And if I can learn, if I can give you free information just from social media and just little videos here and there to keep that fuel that fire, great. If you want to move on to the next level with me and come take some courses with me, great. If you want to come sign up at the college, do it in person, great. If you want to have me come into your shop or your business and educate your employees, great. So for me, I will just I want to be there and be a source for people to have conversations for, and give them resources and share with them what I know and what I continue to learn. I mean, my learning approach is such that the first course you'll take with me, we're going to go from the Industrial Revolution all the way through to understand where it all began and that it's not a new concept, right? Even, people have been calling out industry, the tanning industry, since the 1800s of those smells in the water. What is this? We can't have this. Climate change. We knew about the global, the greenhouse effect that it would take place in the 1800s, right? It was just science was because it's a scientific deal. It's okay, those gases, yes, trap heat, got it. Guys, we may be in some trouble here. So I think we've got to know kind of where we've been, and even on the social side, whether it was labor rights, factory conditions, sweatshop conditions, how we moved from in-home to in factories to bringing in children to work and to fit into small spaces, and underpaid, unsafe working conditions, no representation, migrant workforce, all those things that we still deal with today have been going on for hundreds of years. And so I think it's important for me to people to know that this is not brand new. And talk about systemic, it has been hey, since when we started, industrialization, it has been this way, and we are still dealing with it. We're still having factories collapse and catch fire, and we're still chasing around the world for the cheapest price for everything. Something's got to stop. So a lot of it is, how do we empower each other to kind of go, you know what? Just like right now, there's a tipping moment, right, where everybody's you know what? Enough is enough. And I don't think we can compare at all the movement that is happening right now for Black Lives Matter and for justice and against brutality. But same thing, people have to rise up and vote with their dollars and just go, you know what? Yeah, I've learned enough. We got to do something. It's easier said than done, though, too, because I know we are all, we have families and kids and life is busy, and it's just easier to just shop online and click and buy because that was the right price, and to say, well, next time I will choose better. I promise myself I will. I judge nobody and I blame nobody. I just want to keep the fire lit and just continuously push everybody to just keep learning and ask questions and push back on their favorite brands.
Well, I think one of the important things as well, Derek, to add to everything you just said, is that it goes deeper even still, right? If we can internally be at one with ourselves, and I don't want to go too kind of, hippie with this, but if we can internalize things and figure out ourselves, if we're not able to be full ourselves to give, okay, if we're not at that point, then why would you be thinking about anything else? Why would you have the energy to really be caring about anything else? So it kind of goes into introspective or with a lot of this. But something you mentioned before, and I mentioned on a conversation with Adam, who owns a brand Triarchy, this incredible sustainable denim brand in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
There's a movie that came out recently called Greed, and it's a British movie with a comedian that's kind of plays the lead role. And it essentially follows him and the journey of buying a cheaper denim as possible to sell for bigger margin. And it shows how corrupt and disgusting this person is who he plays. And then the conditions of the workplaces in different areas, whether it's India or wherever else it is. But then at the very end, at the end of the movie, it shows statistics of what's currently going on. And I think that's a big eye opener and a help to sort of show other people that actually don't know, and to be able for people to start thinking. Because once you see and you start to think, you can't unthink and unsee what you've seen.
Right. Yeah, and I'd love to see that. And there's a book that I give to all my students too that I urge them to read. It's The Ecology of Commerce, right, by Paul Hawken. And nobody to me writes about this topic more eloquently than he does. And whether he now has a book or a project called Project Drawdown, right, which is about climate change solutions for us and for brands. But he even in his book talks about this shift that has to happen. We've got it all backwards, because a big part of it, though, is what are called externalities. And so by the business that we do, that cheaper jean that you're talking about, that guy was chasing, of course, to him, it just makes perfect sense, because the system is set up to buy low, sell high, everything else be damned. It doesn't matter, right? So nobody is accounting for emissions, air pollution, the water pollution, the suffering, the pain and suffering of people in the supply chain, the low wages, the unpaid invoices, etc. None of that went into the cost sheet. What went into the cost sheet? The material cost, the transportation, the trims, the labor at the cheapest price, and that was it. Grit, add that up. That's not the full cost. We have all these externalities that sit out here, and there's this concept of we need to internalize those. And once we can all take those costs that all of us, you, me, everybody else, society, we pay for those no matter what, how does the maker end up having to account for those and pay for those, so that we're realizing there is no such thing as a cheap product, because what's cheap now, it just comes back to bite us in the long run. And that particular guy might get away with it for now while we all pay the burden, right? So it's just a really important book to read. And it's just to your point, once you know, you can't go backwards. And that's for me. I made that commitment 2006, I think it was, when we did a lunch and learn at Vulcan, and we watched An Inconvenient Truth, right? And I remember same thing, just sitting in that room, just going, what, how, why do I not know? And there's no way I'm not going to be part of this. Now that I know, this is what I'm dedicating my career to. And I did, because it just hit me that hard. And I knew that I was all in. This is what I was going to do. So yeah, it is a lot to take in, and it's just a mind shift. And we do need to get people in the right place to feel like they can be a part of it and that they can contribute. And It's easy to be overwhelmed, I guess, by big brands, big business, and just go, hey, I'll never make a difference. So why should I take the burden of paying more for my clothes when nobody else is,
Yeah, I think I truly believe, and you and I spoke a bit about this before we started this conversation. I do believe and have faith that the customer or the citizen will be making the right decisions from now on. I truly believe that, because I truly believe that, I say they, but us, we want to see complete transparency with whatever we're purchasing. We want to see transparency in the way that we understand the time and effort, the labor, the costs that's gone into something, and the reason for that, right? Because that's obviously a lot that we don't see is a high price tag on a product, but you don't see all of the factors or the reasons behind all of that. And it was to your point that you made before, that there is a true and a real cost to everything that we don't actually get to see until it's too late. And I think that the work you do and a lot of other people do is paramount, and we need that more so that people do understand what those actual costs are. There was something I want to read this really quick, and I love on your website, on the Underswell website, you say that sustainability is something that happens in between and all the time, underneath the hype, and even sometimes without recognition. I think that, and then you also say at the end, and reaping the rewards with or without recognition. I think that's really important. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, I think, for me, when I was coming up with sort of a name for what I wanted to call myself, or my consulting practice, was, to me, that's exactly what it was. And I likened it to being a surfer, right? For me, I like surfing in all the in-between days when it's not so crowded. Waves might be kind of crap, but you had a magical session. I was catching way more waves than sitting out there on peak swell days with 150 guys out and like battling for waves and being frustrated. It's all those in-between days that make up your year of like, I had a really good winter or a good summer of surfing. And it wasn't because I waited for the best thing and when all the cameras were out, it's just like, nope, keep quiet, keep under the radar, keep doing it. Before you know it, and I practice a lot of yoga too. It's the same way. You practice, it's your practice, and a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, not making a fuss about it. And before you know it, you look up and you're like, hey, actually, I've been doing this for a long time and I feel really good. I'm in tune. So it was this underswell that I thought of. It's like, it's not the big swell events. It's everything that's in between. And for sustainability to really work, we used to talk about it in terms of you have to ingrain it into the DNA of your business or into your life. It has to become a part of the construct, right? It has to be ingrained into the brand and the ethos and the values of the company. So it is a quiet journey that has to happen at every level. Employees, every part, leadership, the board, everybody's got to be on board, and that takes time. And I get it. So it has to just be kind of this slow moving process. 3 years go by, 4 years go by, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, we've got a program. We're doing some good stuff here.
Tell me a little bit. I'm really interested to hear more about the yoga brand that you started, the collection Cosm. Can you explain a bit about that and the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, we knew, when we started, Troy came to me and he's like, hey, you know what? I'm looking for some yoga gear. I'm so into yoga. He'd been practicing yoga for many years. And I was early on in my yoga journey once we started talking about this, but he goes, hey, I'm looking for product that fits my aesthetic, that is the right brand, that has the right values of me that I do. I can't find anything. He was done with his Volcom journey by then. And he just felt like he was out in the marketplace looking for something that hit his needs. And he goes, I can't find it. There's nothing out there. And he goes, I think there's an opportunity. Let's go make our own brand. He goes, but if we're doing it, I don't want to just make another brand. I want to do it the best way we can, and I need you, and he's like, come with me to go do this. I'm like, okay, I'll quit my job, and we did. And what I did, what I loved it is I truly took my playbook of everything that I had learned from what I was trying to do at Volcom, or what I had learned from Caring, or from every conference that I went. I knew what the rules were and what all the great brands were doing. whether it was we became a certified B Corp. We registered as a benefit corp. We have a transparent business model. So we call it the open book business model. At the time, Everlane, that was a big thing that they were doing. Now, most brands are doing this, but it's like, hey, here's where we make it, the name of the factory for every item, every trim. Our items are priced higher. They're not crazy, but it's not cheap. But here's why. We're making it here locally, where it's in a tight, supply chain that we have interaction with. Here's the price of the fabric. Here's our yield. Here's how much you paid for the label, the packaging. We have nothing to hide. Doing our bet, only choosing responsible fibers from the beginning. So there is no, well, this is the good collection. It's just everything is upcycled, recycled, made with hemp, organic cotton. So really just putting it all out there. And our focus is on being a brand for people who are mindful and who are doing things different. Started off kind of with a focus on yoga. We still make a great yoga short, but it's products that you just want to wear every day that are comfortable. I want it to be a brand that aligns with mindfulness, your mindfulness journey. When you see that logo, you're like, oh, so I know how you think. I know what you're into, and got it. I get it. I know where you're headed, So yeah, it's been really fun.
I love that, Derek. Just if anybody's listening that doesn't know what a B Corp is, can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the B Corp movement or B Lab, so they've got this movement, this collection or a community of brands who have signed on. So it's a self-assessment. So brands, you could do it for free. You could go right now and download the self-assessment, and they focus on, it's the triple bottom line. We call it people, planet, profit, or looking at your social, environmental, and governance and economic balance, right? I throw governance in there. Usually we say social, economic, and environmental. So you're balancing all those things to make sure none of them get forgotten. But we also have to have governance. So the B Corp assessment looks at, well, is your management bought in? Are they incentivized to uphold these environmental and social targets that you have? What does your supply chain look like? Is there diversity on your board? How many women? How many minorities? How many people of color? What kind of communities are you working in? Right, everything. It's this laundry list of checkpoints that you have to go through. And it can be frustrating because you're like, no, we're not doing that either. We're not doing that either. But that's your roadmap, right? Mm-hmm. So as a brand, you go in and you check and you do what you can. You go in and fix, write new statements. Do you have a good code of conduct? Do you have a restricted substances list? All these things. You get that audited by their team. If you reach enough points because you have your stuff in order, you become what's called a certified B Corp. Once you're a certified B Corp, though, you have all these great initiatives. You have values. You might have a code of ethics, et cetera. You've got all this great stuff built into your company. You can lock that in legally by becoming what's called a benefit corp. And actually, if you become a certified corp, B Corp, they'll have you become a benefit corp within 2 years, I believe it is. That is you can become a C Corp or an S Corp for your tax filing, but you lock in as a benefit corp. California offers it, Delaware, many other states too. But that means that no matter who comes and buys you, if you have more shareholders that you get diluted for me, if we got diluted so much that I'm no longer the majority, you can't take away what we've locked in terms of environmental, social, purpose, et cetera. It's locked it in. Patagonia is a benefit corp. Ben & Jerry's was, Method, 7th generation, so on and so forth, right? So I guess in a nutshell, that's what it starts off as an assessment, triple bottom line. They say using business as a force for good. So how can your business be used to drive purpose, social purpose, environmental purpose through the rest of the world and be an ambassador for good?
Derek, that makes complete sense to me. If I was looking at brands and companies or starting my own,
yeah.
Why do you not think that is a mandate that people should be abided by?
I don't know, Luke. That's for me too. I do know. It's harder, right? It's harder. It's slower. It's cumbersome. That means here's the easy excuse. Well, we're a tiny little team. That report it's going to take weeks, and then we have to pay a fee to do it. And can't we just do some things? And we know we're doing the right thing. This is a third-party audit that somebody else can come in and say, hey, this is in line with our standards. You're now part of a community. You've got a messaging tool, but it forces you to look into the mirror and face up to all those things that you should be doing and you may not be doing, right? What % of your line of your collection is using these types of materials? how much of your energy grid is, connected to coal, all those things. And those are things that you're like, really? I don't know. We're just trying to make some t-shirts, man. So I get why people don't do it, but we condition ourselves to move so fast, so cheap, so quick. And it's just, I think you have to, once you decide like, no, I'm in for this way, you're going to say no to some things that seem really tasty and really appetizing. You're just like, I can't, that's not how we do business. I could for sure find a cheaper way to make our cosm products. Absolutely. So if investors come like, well, your margins are a little low, your prices are high. Yeah, but this is just how we're doing business. You can scale it up and do it with great factories, fair trade factories, in overseas in Vietnam or India. Yes, but if I'm moving overseas, we're going to be in a fair trade factory using certified organic cotton or hemp, having a transparent supply chain, a traceable supply chain. Third-party certifications cost more. It slows up your production. One more certificate, one more transaction, one more set of eyes, but it's a check on you. So it's just slower, more expensive, and takes more effort.
Yeah. Well, I do know though, Derek, when I see that a brand has that or is a part of that, it makes me feel confident that they're doing the right thing. And so I'm going to spend my money with a brand and company that is B Corp or at least has an effort in everything that we've just been talking about. As you were talking, Derek, I was thinking that going back to social and ethics within brands and companies, and you mentioned diversity, which is all part of being a B Corp. I have a good friend that runs a nonprofit called Creative Futures, and essentially what they do is they help ex-incarcerated people, predominantly women because there's a bigger issue, and predominantly women of color because that's an even bigger issue. And they take these people and they put them through a 12-week program through creatives. There's a lot about fashion, there's a lot about music, art. And at the end of it, they then give them placements or find them placements within companies to help them grow and develop and then take jobs in those careers. And I just think it comes down to really bigger companies thinking more about how they're structuring their business. Because if you have that diversity and that inclusiveness in social and ethics within the company, that's going to help the company grow through other areas, whether it's sustainability or whatever else it is. I heard, I'm not going to name the very large company, but I have a friend that works for a very large company, and he was talking about the issues of diversity they have within that company, where they have to meet certain goals to employ and hire certain people within that diversity sector, but they seem that they're unable to do that, and then they hit issues. But it just kind of doesn't make sense that there isn't more of these programs that help and enable people to funnel into bigger companies, to reach that.
Yeah, but I think just like your friend's company that you're talking about, it takes a concerted effort, and that's one thing we're working on at cosm. I mean, even for as small as we are, our network, our community was, I've had issue. I'm like, we need to get people of color here represented even in our marketing, right? It's white men, right? For the most part. And, but that is an effort. We have to then go out and say, okay, we need to go of course there are men of color doing yoga and women of color, practicing mindfulness. How can we get them onto our team? And we just brought on our first, woman onto our team, which is awesome, right? So she's a woman and she's a woman of Asian descent. So it's like, okay, we got some diversity now. But it's good, but it takes a concerted effort, and that's what we're learning, right? This is not just about not just settling in and say, well, of course we're not discriminating. It's like, but you're not actively going out and building in diversity and equity and making sure that you are representing the new way forward, so it takes a conscious effort for sure.
Well, one of the things, as you was talking then, Creative Futures, they put through this girl, amazing creative girl, through their program, and then placed her at the World Surfing League. She's now in the marketing team there, and she's a woman of color, and the stories and marketing she's creating the content I've seen is just phenomenal, because she's able to bring forth these incredible stories that you wouldn't normally see. And I do feel that we need to see more of that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it just takes continuing the conversation and making everybody go, gosh, you know what? I guess, yeah, I never really thought of that. It didn't, so we just have to start talking, but keep talking about it.
Let's go back a bit, Derek. Talk to me a bit more about the triple bottom line. I know that's a big part of what you do with Underswell. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, just getting, making sure. And I think at this point too, for most brands I talk to they know that this is a conversation that they have to have in their products, that their customers want it, appreciate it. Their competitors surely are. Most every significant brand, especially in the apparel footwear space, is doing things that are above and beyond what many people know. Nike, Adidas, Levi's, Patagonia, North Face, Allbirds, right? It's like these are brands that are really pushing hard deep in their supply chains. So the smaller brands that are coming up, or the mid-sized ones, know that, hey, we need to get into this. We've got some things. We're using some recycled. We're dabbling in organic, but gosh, it's so expensive. So is there anything else? The idea is, well, hang on here. Sustainability doesn't have to be about recycled or organic. It should. Your biggest impacts are furthest back in your supply chain on the environmental side. But even talking to consumers, so we have to look at it holistically. Triple bottom line from people, and that's where we start, right? Let's actually let's just focus on fair trade. Let's talk about living wages. Let's talk about gender diversity and women's empowerment in your supply chain. Most of your factory workers are probably women. How are they being treated? What kind of programs are there for them? Is there childcare, et cetera? We can go in there and build a great program without raising your costs on cotton. So that's one place, and getting them to realize, like, hey, do you have a compliance program in place? And are you doing audits? And do you have the best in class? And is there somebody certifying? And can we get you maybe to fair trade? So balancing people's needs with the environment impact, the environmental impacts, so balancing environmental, social impacts, and of course, making sure that your economic balance is met. Does you no good to be a brand that is pushing so hard on these initiatives and doing great work only to go out of business in 2 years because you were doing too much good? That now we lost because we needed you. We need you around for 10 or 15 years or 20 years, like Patagonia, right? Because then we continue to have another ally to say, hey, look, and Outer Known is doing it, and Allbirds is doing it, and look who else, just got a fair trade certification, or look who else just converted to 100% organic cotton. So it's just about finding the balance and making sure that you are looking at it holistically, stepping back. And there is a lot of brands too, they want the quick fix. You're like, but what can we do right now? It's like, well, you can start talking to your customers about overconsumption. That's something you can do right now, and about conscious consumerism. There's an easy start. It's like, oh, but that's not, it's just this long approach, and there are so many different things. But again, going back to the Sustainable Development Goals, that grid of those 17 goals, that represents the triple bottom line. You're focusing on people, planet, and your economic needs, and making sure they are all in balance so that you can have a business, back to the B Corp model, that is doing, using business as a force for doing something good in the world.
Yeah. I love that. I love everything about that, Derek. I really do. Derek, I'm interested to know, is there somebody, or is there a business or brand or company that you think is really blazing the way forward, making changes for good?
The first one that always comes to mind is just Patagonia. I mean, it's so cliche, but they have really paved the way for so many brands. And here's what makes them unique too, is Yvon Chouinard's vision and commitment. So what I call it is a grilled cheese approach. You've got to have heat coming from the top, but you've also got to have employees and all the foot soldiers just as fired up to melt that cheese just right. So they exemplify that grilled cheese effect 100%. But Yvon Chouinard's approach has always been like no compromise, right? And so they continuously push so hard and get into these spaces where you're like, gosh, nobody was talking about that. Nobody was talking about that. They're just tuned in, and they continue to do great work. However, I will say that is almost a given. but because I'm in the apparel space, I mean, that's my specialty. So there are brands that I think that are of surprise that are pushing hard, whether it's even H&M. Can we criticize and have a conversation, do a case study? For sure. But they're putting a lot of effort, they're putting a lot of support, a lot of value, and they're winning the transparency index, recognition. So their former head of sustainability is their CEO now. So there's something good there. Adidas has a great program focusing on circularity in their products, making a monofiber shoe that can just be chipped up, remelted, made back into a shoe again. Nike, of course, Levi's has done great work, all those that I've mentioned. So there's a handful of them. I think Outer Known, for a small young brand, has really pushed hard. But even Burton, the work that I was doing at Volcom was really great. We did a farm to yarn program, tracing their organic cotton all the way back to the farmers, and doing farmer business school and a women's empowerment program, going to India, knowing that, hey, this is where our cotton is grown, and we'll trace it all the way through the t-shirt. So all different levels. And I guess, not a real quick answer, but I got a couple favorites.
No, I appreciate that. Before we wrap this up, Derek, there's one last thing I'd like to know. Is there one piece of advice, something small that you can give for people to take away that they can implement in their life? It doesn't have to be sustainability necessarily, but something that could really help for change.
Yeah, I think I do too. So, often when I meet with brands or meet with companies or do kind of workshops, I kind of do this running list of like, hey, here are the top things you can do. But at the top of those, there's something that I've already mentioned, but study the SDGs, those Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations. They put so much work into them. They came from the Millennial Development Goals, and they are a set of 17 goals that look at, and they have a great tracker. They've got their website is a great resource, but go learn how poverty connects to sustainability and how that connects to, sustainable infrastructure and how it relates to eliminating hunger. And when there's no hunger, that it all ties together. And so studying that is really important. And then studying nature. Nature is our guide for everything, whether it's biomimicry and designing according to nature's principles, looking to nature for solutions. The way nature behaves, there is no waste, right? Waste is just food for the next cycle. And so when we can just kind of stop and go, how does nature handle this issue? And understanding the flows of carbon and oxygen and, sequestration into the ocean and carrying capacity, all these things really, really, really helps to understand. We have to go back and look at nature. And so many, Paul Hawken asks in his book, he goes, hey, you can name, and I'm guilty of this, I can name 50 brands right now, of my favorite brands. Can I name 10 of our indigenous trees here in Costa Mesa? No, couldn't do it. Indigenous birds? No, couldn't do it. I should. We need to be able to. We've lost our connection, and I know why. I understand why. So challenge yourself to get out there and learn and connect and appreciate it and study it and learn from it.
Yeah, that's extremely valuable. And I'm really, really grateful and pleased that you ended with that, Derek. Mm-hmm. I think you're an incredible person. I love the work that you do. I can't advocate you enough. I'm putting together an advisory board for the world, so I'd love for you to be on it. And thank you, mate. And just before you go, can you just let everybody know where they can find you more and get more information on you and Underswell?
Yeah, just follow me either at The Underswell. My website is The Underswell. That's all my social channels for that. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, just under Derek Sabori, Derek A. Sabori. And then the brand, the Cosm, is just at The Cosm, Kozm. Those are all the places that I'm hanging out at these days. So love to see you guys over there. Thank you. Thank you, Luke.
Fantastic, mate. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get to meet each other in the very near future.
Yeah, soon enough. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, mate. Take care.
Hey, bud.
Wow, what can I say? The work Derek has done and still does now is incredible. I've learned a lot from that conversation, I know for sure. And I hope also you took something away from that. Incredible guy. I can't advocate him enough, and I would love for you to follow up and research more about the work he does. So I'll be back again soon. Thank you for joining.